Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD bodybuilder, back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about pyramid sets and reverse pyramid sets versus straight sets for hypertrophy. This is one of the most common questions I've been getting lately, so we're going to shed some light on the topic. Quick outline for today, I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of pyramid sets, straight sets, and reverse pyramid sets. Lastly, I'll put everything together to give you some recommendations on which of these methods you should be using for hypertrophy. If you've been enjoying my content, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. Alright, let's start off with pyramid sets. Pyramid sets are where you start with lower weight and more reps, and as the sets go on, you increase the amount of weight and decrease the number of reps. Now the pro of doing pyramid sets is that starting off with that lower weight, higher rep work might help in warming up to higher weights. Now in terms of cons of pyramid sets, the main thing is that when you start off with high rep sets early on, you build up a lot of metabolites which will fatigue you and interfere with your heavy work. This is more of an issue for us as bodybuilders since we work in higher rep ranges, typically somewhere in the 6 to 20 rep range. And if you start off your workout on heavy compound movements with sets of 10 reps or more, you might find yourself becoming quite fatigued. And you might not be able to lift as much weight or as many reps on your heavy top sets at the end. Now the main issue with this is that you might not get as much of a strength stimulus if you're not able to do that high quality heavy work. We'll talk more about that strength stimulus in a bit. The other con of doing pyramid sets is that they're harder to track compared to straight sets. Alright, now let's move on to talk about straight sets. And straight sets are where you keep the weight steady and keep the reps steady as well across sets. Now in terms of pros of straight sets, the main thing is that they're the easiest way to track how much you're doing. Along that same line of reasoning, it's also the easiest method to progress. It's really easy to quantify your progressive overload if you're, say, doing 3x10 and the next week you add on 5 pounds and keep the reps the same, or if you add on a rep and go to 3x11. Now the cons of straight sets is that it can be tricky to get your repetitions in reserve and intensity right. Now when I say intensity, I mean the amount of weight on the bar, and repetitions in reserve are how close you go to failure. From my other videos, you'll know that we typically aim for 0 to 4 reps in reserve for optimal hypertrophy. And my personal recommendation is to shoot for around 1 to 2 reps in reserve. So the question that follows that is, if you're using the same weight and the same number of reps across sets, your first sets are going to be easier and your last sets are going to be harder or closer to failure. And it might be tricky to hit your optimal repetitions in reserve range. So some people might find that their first sets may be too easy, so that means they have more than 4 reps left in the tank, or that their last sets are too hard, which means, for example, that they're going right to failure more often than they intend to, or perhaps not completing the number of reps prescribed. Now there are some solutions to that which I'll talk about in the recommendations. Now let's talk about reverse pyramid sets. There are a couple of ways you can do this. First off, you'll start off with your first set with heavy weight and fewer reps, and as the sets go on, you decrease the amount of weight and increase the number of reps. The other way you can do this is to start off with a top heavy set with fewer reps, and then after that, drop the weight, increase the number of reps, and then do straight sets after that. Now the pros of reverse pyramid sets is that they're good for strength development. Specificity is very important for all sports. And basically if you want to build your strength, you're going to have to spend time doing heavy work. And if developing strength is important to you, it makes sense to put that heavy strength training at the beginning of your workout when you're fresh. That way you'll perform your best, be able to use the most amount of weight for the most number of reps on those early sets. Now is building strength itself important for hypertrophy? This is somewhat controversial and beyond the scope of this video. But basically, if you want to just build your 1RM in a certain movement, that's not necessarily correlated to muscle growth. However, if you're increasing your ability to lift weight across all rep ranges, you're going to be increasing the amount of mechanical tension you can put on your muscle, which theoretically should boost muscle growth. Now the other pro doing reverse pyramid sets is that it might feel easier mentally when you reduce weight across sets. Moving on to cons, in a similar way to pyramid sets, reverse pyramid sets are harder to track than straight sets. Alright, now let's put everything together to give you some recommendations on when you should use pyramid sets, straight sets, or reverse pyramid sets. Now my bottom line recommendation is that you should do what allows you to perform the most cumulative volume across the workout. Now after progressive overload, volume is the most important training variable when it comes to hypertrophy. So you generally want to be aiming to do as much productive volume as possible. Now when I say cumulative volume, you're basically adding up all the volume you did across the workout. You can roughly quantify cumulative volume by using the definition of volume of sets times reps times weight lifted. So if we're looking at one exercise here in a workout, say you did 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds. If you look at sets times reps times weight lifted, that's 3 sets of 10 reps with 100 pounds, and multiply that together, you get a cumulative volume of 3,000 pounds, and this is your cumulative volume for that exercise. Some people might also call this tonnage. Now this was an example of straight sets. Now what if we wanted to compare this to, for example, a pyramid set workout? The important thing here when you're comparing different workout styles is that you want to make sure that you're generating the same amount of fatigue. So let's say for straight sets you did 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds. And if you push yourself to the same degree, so same amount of fatigue, on pyramid sets, let's say you were able to do 12 reps of 100 pounds, then 10 reps of 90 pounds, and 8 reps of 80 pounds. If you look at the cumulative volume in this example, for the straight sets, you got 3,000 pounds. For the pyramid sets, you ended up getting 2,740 pounds, which is less. So in this example, the first workout would probably be better for hypertrophy. Now looking at tonnage like this is not a hard and fast rule in terms of estimating productivity. However, it's a rough way of comparing the amount of work that you're performing for different workouts. What I ultimately want to say about this is that you need to test out the different methods to see what allows you to perform the most cumulative volume. A certain style might work best for different people, and it might even vary between exercises. In my opinion, I'm generally against pyramid sets because I think that those higher rep sets at the beginning are going to fatigue you for your heavy work later on. I typically prefer straight sets for the majority of training since they're easier to track. Now let's troubleshoot some of the problems people have with straight sets. Often people find that they have trouble hitting a certain number of repetitions in reserve across sets if the weight is the same and the reps are the same. I generally advise aiming for a repetition in reserve range. So for example, in your first set you might have 2 reps in reserve, and by the last set you might have 1 rep in reserve, doing the same number of reps. The other important thing here is that it's okay if reps drop off slightly. So let's say you're aiming for 1 to 2 reps in reserve and you're starting off with 12 reps. As you become fatigued as your sets go on, your repetition number might go down, say from 12 to 11 to 10. That's fine as long as you're staying within a goal repetition range. It might be an issue though if your reps drop off from say 12 to 7 to 4. If you're having troubles with getting fatigued as straight sets go on, you might consider taking longer rest breaks. This might help you keep your reps up higher so they're not dropping off so drastically. Lastly, I actually like reverse pyramid sets, so I'd recommend trying reverse pyramid sets if you haven't, especially if strength is priority to you. Having your heavy low rep work at the beginning will make sure that you hit it when you're fresh, and you'll get the most out of it in terms of strength gains. The other thing about reverse pyramid sets is that they're best for heavy compound movements. Try it out and see which exercises this will work best for you, but something like reverse pyramid sets will probably work best for your main heavy exercise for a muscle group at the beginning of the workout. There's not much point in trying to program strength type training for isolation work, so I typically like using straight sets for my isolation work later in the workout. Now keep in mind that these are just ideas to try, nothing set in stone in terms of these repetition schemes. That's all for now guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like the video and leave me a comment below. I'm really good about answering every single one of my comments, so you'll definitely hear back from me. If you want to learn about how to program the big movements for hypertrophy, check out my video on how to squat, bench press, and deadlift for hypertrophy, where I go through each of these big 3 movements and give you some pointers on how to program them specifically for muscle growth. If you've been getting value from this channel, make sure you subscribe and share it with your fitness friends so they can benefit from it too. See you next time.